Welcome to Future Pulse, a podcast series brought to you by IPI, your innovation partner for impact. Together, we will explore how ideas, creativity, and collaboration drive impactful innovation. Welcome to this episode of Future Pulse, Partnerships That Last. I'm Yvonne Chan, and I'm joined by David Toe, the Chief Executive Officer at Intuitive, and Jason Humphreys, the co-founder of Subom at Good Pharma Dermatology. As a business takes off, the company's first newly formed collaboration with another like-minded organization, one that is able to lend support, expertise, and resources cannot be overstated. However, partnerships do fall through as easily as they are formed. In this episode, we explore a checklist for a successful partnership. What type of partnerships are productive, and what is the secret to a long lasting collaboration? Let's kick it off now with a first question to David. David, please tell us more about your role at Intuitive and the role that different partnerships play in making things happen.
Okay, thanks, Yvonne. Intuitive is the innovation and enterprise subsidiary of the Nanyang Technological University. Our mission is to commercialize the intellectual property generated at the university. And we do this through licensing to large enterprises, SMEs, and startup companies. What we do is we work extensively with different partners in the ecosystem to find companies willing to license our technologies, or investors interested in investing in our startups, as well as individuals and organizations interested in potential business opportunities in our sphere of innovation activities.
What about the role of different partnerships, though? Tell us a little bit about that.
We have a significant number of partnerships all around the ecosystem, principally because Intuitive is a rather lean organization. We cannot be all things to all people, so we need to lean on organizations, companies, individuals who may have the necessary relationships to open doors so that we can then do business development activities, or we can find money to help our startups, or we can find entrepreneurs and people to come in and help build the companies. We also talk to trade associations. We talk to organizations such as IPI, who have themselves being part of the Enterprise Singapore Group, have extensive relationships with a number of SMEs in Singapore, as well as organizations and businesses in the region and globally. We depend on organizations such as IPI to help us open doors to find potential kind of business opportunities for both the university and our startups.
Yeah, you mentioned that as an organization, you can't be everything to everyone. Let's bring Jason into the conversation here. Jason, can you share with us how open innovation, reaching out for partnerships, was critical to Subom's commercial success?
Thanks for that. And picking up on an organization that David mentioned, which is IPI. We have a business that was, formulated and developed through some matchmaking from IPI with Singapore's National Skin Centre. One of the physicians there, Dr. Tay Hong Liang, had developed a very unique cream for eczema. They were using it very successfully at the hospital, and the far-sighted head of the National Skin Centre, Prof. Roy Chan, was looking for a commercial partner through IPI. That was 8 years ago. The relationship has now gone from strength to strength, that partnership between ourselves and the National Skin Centre. It was set up well. We've now sold over 1 million tubes of Subom across over 10 countries. And so it's been a very good experience.
That was definitely a very critical partnership to have established right from the get-go. Thanks, Jason. David, in your role at Intuitive, I'd just like you to go into a little bit more detail. What type of partnerships have you seen that really worked?
So the university's research mandate is very broad and deep. And Intuitive itself is just the tech transfer organization of the university. So we cannot match the university's breadth and depth. We have about 2,000 researchers and professors on campus. So being a lean organization, as I mentioned earlier, we can't be an expert in all domains of industries, right? So we have to rely on organizations such as IPI, trade associations, semiconductor associations, marine industry individuals, or photonics associations, as well as companies to help us understand where the market needs and opportunities are. So in that respect, IPI, for instance, was able to introduce us to one particular SME who was interested in one of our, for instance, our fire retardation coatings, which were meant to be applied onto buildings. Subsequently, the company expressed interest in taking that technology further. They then took a license from Intuitive, built out the factory capacity, and started pilot production of the coatings for their clients. So it was really through IPI that we had this customer discovery process where we found this particular SME, which we never heard of before. And they gave us a fantastic opportunity. It was a win-win kind of arrangement that came about because we were, through our technology, able to level up the SME, give them a new product to upsell to their clients, while we, in turn, Intuitive, was able to capture some licensing revenues from this activity.
So that really was like a matchmaking opportunity that was successful, wasn't it? Jason, do you want to weigh in here on this viewpoint about what partnerships can work, do work?
I think it's that, this is in a way should be self-evident, but of course it's not always self-evident. There has to be something in it for both parties. You can spend a lot of time going through legal contracts of partnerships, but unless there's something long-standing and meaningful for both parties, I think you'll never hold someone in a partnership just because it's in a contract. That's unlikely to maximize an opportunity. And so I think, as I mentioned with Professor Roy Chan, he runs a hospital. He could take a narrow view that it's just about doing the best for the patients at his hospital. But in this case, he felt it was important to get the best skin health for the maximum number of Singaporeans. And therefore, he needed a partner to get that done. From our perspective, we could buy lots of formulations off the shelf from OEM manufacturers, but a product that came with the credibility of the National Skin Centre, once we took it to market, that would give us a very strong, unique differentiator in the market. So both parties, had something really to gain from the partnership. And I think it is, as I say, it should be obvious, but it's not always. If you go with the mindset of, I'll try and get one over the partner by being cleverer, I don't think that works in the long term.
Mm-hmm.
It is partnership.
It's about win-win and that trust, right?
Yeah.
Equal partnership.
Yeah, well, it is. Let's face it. We know that we all know in Singapore the phrase kiasu, right? And if you try to be a little bit too kiasu in the agreements, I'm not sure it's going to work too well.
Yeah, hold that thought, Jason. We definitely want to come back to this thing about what would make that partnership last even longer. But just very quickly, Jason, the partnership with NSC, that was facilitated by IPI at the early stages. That was a local one. What other regional or global partnerships were sought to enable Subam to become a globally competitive product?
Yeah, it's a great question. Often when companies try to internationalize quickly, you will look for distributors in different markets. And we had set up distributors in Korea, Taiwan, Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand. 2 of those out of the 5 have been reasonably successful, 3 less successful. And when I kind of look at that, it's because where we've held a lot of, our expertise is strong in sales and marketing. Where we've held a lot of oversight on that, the product tends to have done well. Where we put it with a big company, where Subalm is just another product, and there's not been a lot of focus on it, it hasn't done so well. So again, I think we didn't appreciate early on how much, again, you really need to look at how seriously the partnership will be taken. We have other elements of our business, which is supply chain partners to get the product to customers around Asia, where we work with two big companies, one of which is headquartered in Singapore, Zulig company. And, their strength is supply chain. Our strength is sales and marketing. It works beautifully in Indonesia. It works beautifully in Hong Kong, in Malaysia, etc.
Great pointers there. Still on this topic of regional and global partnerships, David, as an experienced business development and commercialization director for early stage tech innovations, how necessary are regional and global partnerships in order to, enable a business to have a successful impact, right, going beyond Singapore's shores?
Singapore is a really, really tiny market, and we are unique in some, in many ways. And I would say that the Singapore market sometimes is not representative of really what goes on in the rest of the region or the rest of the world. Because at the end of the day, Singapore is a city-state. When you go into many of the other markets, the geographical distances are much, much larger. The way products or technologies get disseminated or distributed in regional or global markets is much more challenging compared to just the Singapore market. And at the university, most of the innovations that we do or conduct typically address global needs, and often they involve one of the many UNDP sustainability challenges. These could be in the area of energy storage or generation, smart grids, electromobility, cures and diagnostics for diseases, etc. So in order to license our technologies or help our startups get a regional or global foothold, we really need to develop or lean on partners either in the region or around the world to help us open up some of the relationships with businesses or government authorities or regulatory entities in other markets. We can do this for the purposes of licensing our technologies directly to the companies in each market, or we sometimes do this to help our startups, which we incubate in our ecosystem to open up new market opportunities. So some of the challenges of regional and global markets is that we don't, without having a priori relationships with either distributors, companies, government officials, or regulatory bodies that we want to do business with, we don't have sometimes familiarity with local business cultures, local regulatory issues, and even market access mechanisms. So for example, this is an interesting case study in Bangkok or even in places like Japan. When one of our companies tried to set up a subsidiary in Thailand, they sent a Singapore GM over to oversee the business expansion into Thailand. Of course, when the Singapore GM attempted to have dialogues with the Thai companies, they would nod their heads and they would go into meetings and nod their heads and say thank you very much, and then nothing would happen. So this continued for a period of about 1 to 1.5 years until finally the founder got fed up.
Yeah.
And he then asked a Singapore company that had been in the Thai market for a while for some tips, and that Singapore company said, well, who's your country manager? And he said, well, I've got this Singapore guy in charge, I trust him, blah, blah, blah. And I've got this, Thai sales guy, So he says, well, your problem is that you need to hire a Thai country manager because they don't want to deal with a Singapore country manager sitting in Thailand. And they have their unique way of building trust. And that trust is evolved from having somebody who's a local face who can, maybe go out and socialize, go out and eat dinners and have drinks, but conduct business in local Thai language, right? So, you could say the same thing for Japan. It's a complex market to enter as well. But many of these markets are unique in the sense that there is a business culture that you cannot ignore
Yes.
when you enter some of these markets.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure Jason would also agree on that. Jason, you've talked about some of the difference in the partnerships that Subham has had with, big players versus smaller niche players who give a lot more attention to the product. Going forward, what kind of partnerships are you looking for? What sort of synergies would you be focusing on?
When you're an SME and you're growing, you have to kind of decide what capabilities am I going to build within my company and what capabilities it's going to be an overstretch or not sensible for us to build. So early on, we realized that e-commerce would be a big bit of our business, but we didn't honestly have the wherewithal to hire great talent in there. And so we found in Singapore an enterprising lady who had an e-commerce specialty, and she built our partnership. As we've grown bigger, you think, actually now we can't afford to have that outsourced anymore. We need to build it. But so that's one place where we had it, but we'll now bring it in. But as our portfolio, as we see interesting opportunities, kind of an interesting thing. If you walk into Guardian or Watson's, you'll see an aisle full of beauty masks from Korea. And if you think about sensitive skin and eczema, often children have it and they scratch. And if you could put a patch, like a beauty mask, where they have the problem, you can stop them scratching there. You can get the moisturizer to last for a long period of time. But that patch technology is quite tough for moisturizers. We can't build it internally. It's not with our existing contract manufacturer. So we now have a partnership with an interesting Taiwanese company that has until now been all about beauty patches, but is now about to be sensitive skin patches for children. The one other key area where I'm looking for partnerships today, and I'm finding it amazingly hard to find a partner, is real sustainability in packaging. We sell 50,000 plastic tubes a month. They are recyclable. I'm not sure many of them get recycled, and I would love to know that they were biodegradable. So that's an area we're looking.
So this is an open call for potential partners out there who could perhaps help Subham on that sustainability front. But let's crystallize this podcast episode. And what are the elements of a lasting, successful partnership? I mean, really, how can we make it a mutually beneficial one? Like Jason said earlier, it should be win-win with not one party trying to one-up the other. David?
So I think a good partnership requires, I think, three components. One is that you need to build trust in a relationship. Two, you need to create win-win value propositions for both parties. And the third point is the long-term goals of both parties need to be aligned, right? So if you're doing something for the short term where the goals are aligned, but the long-term goal is not aligned, that eventually will break the partnership. Then if you look at trust, trust in turn has to be earned. And it's derived not just from the actions that you take, but the reputation of the parties who are involved in the partnership. So if you have one party that has a shady or bad local reputation, no matter what time or amount of money you spend in that, you're not going to overcome the trust issues because typically, a tiger doesn't change its stripes. And so if you do have one bad party trying to pretend he's good in a relationship where he's trying to build trust with you, that usually doesn't work as well,
It's like
right?
making sure you do your background checks and your KYC.
Yes, correct.
Jason, do you want to add on to that list?
Yeah, I think David makes a really good point. I mean, that due diligence, I mean, for us, we're a brand company, and the elements of brand are, does it work? Does it do what it says it does on the tin? Can I trust it? And so when we go into a market with a partner, there has to be a reputation of that partner in the market, which is a strong reputation and a good reputation. So I think that's probably the good final point to crystallize this on. You wouldn't marry a shady spouse. You probably shouldn't get into business with someone like that either.
Yeah, you need to spend some time cultivating that relationship, right, and getting to know that person or that partner. So, if I had to summarize it, it would be trust, a win-win situation, a win-win with win-win value propositions, and alignment of long-term goals, and just making sure that whoever you decide to get into a business relationship with or partnership you must have done your due diligence. So what last piece of advice would you give to startups seeking partnerships in this current environment of a pandemic, right? Seeking partnerships to grow in this environment, David?
I think as we had mentioned earlier, the building of trust is important, and typically the problem is that no matter what kind of legal agreement you have in place with the partner that you've decided to go into business with, no legal document can cover all aspects of the relationship, but there has to be a governing kind of principle that there's certain gray areas where you don't want to wander into, because it would arouse suspicion on the other part, and managing expectations is really important for companies, right? You always want to under promise and over deliver, right? So startups in this environment where we can't travel, we need to do business overseas. It's going to be even more important to be able to leverage on institutions that already have a priori relationships with companies or enterprises outside of Singapore, so that you want to short circuit that trust building part. You can use an entity like a trade association or Enterprise Singapore or IPI to say, look, I need to get into the Chinese market. So do you have relationships there? IPI might come and tell you, well, I know of this company out there in Shanghai. They're a very decent company. The owner is an honorable person and they're listed on the Shanghai Stock Exchange. So I think that this is a good partner potentially for you. So you need relationships to short circuit those relationships that you're trying to build on, because you're not going to be able to start from scratch and cold call that company without some kind of recommendation matchmaking agency. So it's having that relationship of I trust you and you trust him, therefore that trust can be built because it's built on you knowing that person is of honorable and good character, and then kind of marrying that relationship up.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a great point, though. Leveraging on institutions who can really short circuit this partnership seeking phase of the business. Jason, your key piece of advice, please.
I can only really answer this as a small, medium-sized enterprise. Building a business is really hard unless you are really lucky. There's going to be a lot of things that come in from left field, right field that you weren't expecting. They're going to take a lot of your time. So the reality is you probably do need partnerships. You need people who are doing things that are non-core to your business. Not all of them will work out perfectly, whatever you do. some things will go awry, some of them will work, some of them won't. So I don't think we ever look for perfection, but what we look for is, can this move us forward? And by doing a number of these things, we just de-risk ourselves. But acknowledging, yes, we'd love to do everything ourselves, but we can't, we need them. And over time, we get better at how we get into business and partnerships and how we manage them. But you learn as you build, right? You don't get it right from day one.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you so much, Jason. And thank you so much, David, for sharing your valuable insights with us today. When it comes to looking for the right partners, key advice that you both shared that really resonated with me are, partners really striving to make it a win-win, really not one up against the other, and why the business culture of global and regional partnerships cannot be ignored. If not, you'd spend another 1.5 years not having things move. And how do we make that partnership last? Well, alluding to that whole matchmaking relationship metaphor, the key ingredients are trust, equitable fairness, and I think open communication is also very important. So thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
I'm Yvonne Chan. Thank you for joining us for the past 10 episodes of Future Pulse. We've covered a diverse range of topics, from the importance of design thinking, overcoming adversity to succeed, to identifying that crucial pivot point for a business. We've also heard from esteemed industry leaders, CEOs, and tech advisors who have shared much valuable insight as to how businesses can navigate the future-forward landscape. And we do hope you found the sessions useful. Thank you and goodbye.